Yo, Sito, what we got this week?
Guess what, yo? We got Dorsey Hopson, former superintendent of Memphis, did the largest merger in the entire nation, bringing two cities together in one of these big urban cities. So he's going to talk about a whole lot of stuff. Super excited about that, yo. What do you think?
Let's do this.
No, drop the beat. I say drop the beat. Now let's do this. Let's go again.
Unlearned Unlimited. Unlearned Unlimited.
Welcome to Unlearned Unlimited. My name is Dr. Sito Narcisse. I got my co-host,
Tatiana Echevarria.
Oh,
Welcome.
it is going to be a dope show today. We are super excited. We have Dr. Dorsey Hopson in the house. I call him a doctor, even though he's a law degree, but Dr. Dorsey Hopson in the house, who is one of the former superintendents of Shelby County. For those of you who don't know what Shelby County, that's Memphis, Tennessee, one of the largest districts in Tennessee, but also now a partner at City Fund and worked in the private sector, went from public sector to private sector. In the house with me and Tatiana. It is going to be hype because we're going to talk about all the real stuff. Dorsey, how you doing?
Man, never better. So good to see both of you guys, man. Excited to be here, man, and to talk about the work, man. Let's go.
Let's go.
I think we need to title the show. We ain't. What did he say? We ain't new to this. We true to this.
That's Memphis.
Let's do it. So excited.
What's up, Memphis? How we doing, man? Listen, we super excited. I know it took a while to get you on the show, but we're just glad that you gave me and Tatiana some time. Mm-hmm. As you know, we're always trying to get the innovators and the creators, right, Tatiana?
That is right.
Of the education space.
Well, Cito, I'm always responding. I apologize, I'm a little slow, but let me just start off by sending a shout out, man, to my daughter who we just moved into Spelman College last week. So I've been sort of
all right. Shout out to the HBC.
Yeah. Been focused on that the last couple of weeks, man. And I'll tell you, when your daughter leaves, as I was fighting back my tears, they had this wonderful ceremony that the president spoke at, and she said, "Look, we've been receiving these babies for 140 plus years, and we're going to treat this baby with the same care as we've been doing for over a century." And it made me feel much better. That plus my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, we got a block party at the AUC." I'll holler at you, and I ain't talked to her since then.
Oh, you know what? That sounds about right. Because I think once my mom let me go, I said, "Oh,
yeah,
it's time to do this."
It's grown folks now. So it's better for us to just step away. Let it go live her college life.
Ain't that the truth?
It's funny you said that. We've been having a number of HBCU representatives.
So we've had Morehouse. We've had now you by way of Spelman. We've
University.
Had the FAMs of the world.
FAMU.
We've had Lincoln.
Lincoln was here.
Who else have we
Representative
had?
Edward Waters.
We did. We had my sister, who's chief of staff there.
Who else did we have? I'm trying to think. Most of them were like a lot of HBCUs.
Yeah, we've had good representation. I'm a PWI grad. It's okay. I made an excellent choice. I still believe go Knowles always and forever.
Listen, they didn't have as much fun as everybody else. But that's all right.
Dorsey, we'll talk about that after because we can't broadcast that information.
Yeah, and if you're hollering go Knowles, if I'm not incorrect, I think FAMU was somewhere around the corner, so I suspect you probably spent a little time over there.
We like to say we're across the tracks, literally and figuratively. All right, so let's get this show on the road because we want to learn a little bit or a lot about you, your journey.
Yeah.
I obviously did some research. Sito knows you as well, but I've done some of my own personal digging. Memphis to the day you die, I believe, right? And then, you're a law school grad, you have worked as general counsel, you transitioned and did some amazing things in superintendency. Then you like your pivot game, your pivot game is strong. And then, you worked in healthcare sector. So kind of just tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to the spaces that you have come across along the way?
Yeah, first, let me just start off by thanking God for giving me so many different opportunities in so many different ways and prepare me for so many different kinds of experiences. So when I left Memphis to go to law school back in the late 90s, my goal was to come back to Memphis and be the Memphis Johnny Cochran, right? I'm a trial lawyer.
Wow. Yeah.
But, did pretty well in law school and then got opportunities to go do corporate law, really was exposed to working environments that I had never been exposed to. So I did corporate employment law for a number of years. And when I left, I went to work for the Atlanta Public Schools. And that's when I got my first taste of like K-12 in law. And that's what really got the juices flowing. So worked as general counsel for a couple of districts in Atlanta, then went back to a law firm and then ultimately came back to Memphis as general counsel. And as soon as I got off the boat, we sued the city of Memphis and won a $60 million. We were rolling.
Okay.
We were rolling. I mean, that was sort of my intro back into Memphis. And obviously, there was a lot of behind the scenes legal maneuvering, politic, and so I had to get quickly up to speed, make relationships, and all that. And so I think I was a general counsel for maybe 4 or 5 years, which I thought was one of the best jobs one could have. And then we went through what the New York Times called the largest school merger in U.S. history. And let me just zoom out and give you a little context there, right? So Memphis City Schools at the time had about 100,000+ kids, all poor black and brown, were 90% poor black and brown, right? Shelby
Wow.
County Schools was probably the second most affluent district in the state, probably slightly majority white, but just the socioeconomic conditions much better. So for a number of reasons, the school board in Memphis decided that they needed to force a merger to protect some funding. And so obviously, all of the racial undertones that we deal with in Memphis just came to bear, right? It was like, oh, we're forcing our kids to go to school together. And there's all this narrative about all the things that were wrong and all. I mean, it was really bad. So the Memphis superintendent resigned. I think the plan was for the county superintendent to be the superintendent of the merged district, but the board at the time asked me would I step in for 6 months, help him to merge, do some of the hard work that had to happen on the Memphis side. And so I felt like, all right, well, I can do that for 6 months. And I think 1 month in, the county superintendent resigned. So the board said, hey, will you take this on? And I'm saying to myself at the time, this is really, really jacked up, right? Like, I mean,
I wonder if that's the word.
yeah, that,
you
I mean,
Would you really use that word?
I like to use a little bit.
I
I like to use a little bit more legalese, but let me just keep it 100. Jacked up.
I don't use jacked up with folks coming from Memphis, but, because they use the other words.
The reason was just because there were so many politics, right? You had the county schools didn't want to merge, and so all the board members were literally suing each other. You had the court came in and created a super board. So you had 23 board members. You had all these things happening. You had all these decisions that weren't being made because the politics wouldn't allow really either superintendent at the time to make decisions. So I said, all right, I said, I'll do it. And I think the first day I sat on the job, the team gave me a list of about 60 decisions that needed to be made immediately. And so it was sort of like, all right, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And one of the things that I hear stand out of my mind when a guy said, he said, look, man, sometimes a bad decision is better than no decision, right? So we got
yeah, ain't that the truth?
So, and they literally had, odds on whether the school would open. I mean, it was a total mess. And so we were able to get on the other side, merge the districts. School year, we had a reasonably successful school year, but as soon as the school year started, some of the suburban districts went to the state and got a bill passed so that they could, in effect, demerge, right? So you go through all that work to put the districts together, and then you're immediately working, trying to figure out what it looks like as when they pull out. So that was a challenging time, but I think I learned so much about, people and communications and politics and teaching and learning, and just that was probably the best education one could have. And then we started to focus on, all right, we got the district merged, we got the district demerged, how do we improve student outcomes, right? And so we had a whole list of things that we did. I mean, I could go on and on. We had a few things I'm really proud of, I want to call out. Memphis at the time, they had in Tennessee what was called a priority list. So there were the bottom 5% schools in the state were eligible to be taken over by the state. 85 priority schools. I think at the time I took the role, Memphis had 72. private
Wow.
schools.
Wow.
And just for our audience, Dorsey, the state is taking off the bottom five. What defines as the bottom five?
Yes.
They're poor
So,
performing.
just on the state tests, the aggregate proficiency rate, for lack of a better word, whatever schools, when they ran the list every year, the schools that were in the
Fell
bottom
into that bottom 5%.
Yeah.
And that is again based on student achievement
Yeah.
on the state assessments.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And so, I mean, and it's not, people hear that, and I mean, we shouldn't, think something is wrong with Memphis for having so many schools. I mean, we can get into it, but just the poverty level here is
Yes.
overwhelming.
Yes.
And we can talk about that. And again, poverty is not an excuse, but it does have an impact on what kids go through.
Absolutely. Availability to resources. We
Yes.
keep talking about that so much.
I know it's been a while, but out of 100% poverty level in Memphis City schools would be what?
Oh,
Out of 100%
probably 90% of kids on free reduced lunch. But here's a stat that when you drill down, it just really shocking to me. Yeah, people are poor, but we have 40,000 kids that live in households where the income was less than $10,000 a year.
Wow.
Let me say that again: 40,000 kids, which would probably be the third or fourth largest district in terms of numbers in the state. Just those kids living in households where the income is less than $10,000 a year. So like that,
And give or take, we're talking, I mean, that's way below the poverty line.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
that is significantly
yeah,
below the
you
poverty
got that. I saw a study last year U of M did. I think that Memphis was ranked, depending on how you looked at the data, first or second, ongoing in terms of child poverty, right? Like, so just you think about just the impact that has on, a host of issues that relate to student outcomes. For example, we would know what the kids were having. And let me just back up. I think you expect in the framework that people usually lay out when you start talking about assessments, you make assumptions about where kids are going to be when they start off.
Absolutely. Always.
Yeah, but no, you'd have kids who, you know, before you can start to think about educational strategies, you have to make sure kids are fed. You got to make sure that they can see.
right.
You got to make sure
Maslow's hierarchy
all
of
those
needs.
things.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
so you're
Yep.
trying to account for those things. Oftentimes, you're behind the eight ball because you don't get involved too late, and then you don't have the appropriate resources to raise kids. Right? You're supposed to educate, but not
Yeah.
raise. So, in any event, we had a high number of priority schools. I think when I started, there are 85 priority schools in the state. We had about 72. I think when I left, we cut that number pretty much in half, and some of it was due to we started an innovation zone, which is sort of an in-house turnaround model. Some of it was due to we had some high-performing charters that came into the space. Some of it was due to some school closures. But I mean, like that's one of the things I'd call out too. Our graduation rate went up. I mean, we had a steady, slight, not good enough, but slight uptick in all of our performance areas every year. So there were some positive things that were happening during my time. But I would just say this, just as we keep it real. Let me just, to all the superintendents out there, really to everybody out there in K-12 right now, thank you for what you do every day, right? Like there's never been,
Yeah, that's right.
Amen.
never been a more difficult time in K-12. All the federal uncertainty, you're still dealing with COVID remnants, teacher shortages, et cetera, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So like all those folks are doing God's work, right? So, because I think
That's right.
I think about where I was at the time. So I was probably 4 or 5 years in. And again, I'm not a traditional educator. So I just started to think about, given where we were, what did the school system need to really, really, really have accelerated better outcomes for kids? And so I felt like for my time there, that time, we talk about a time such as this, I think that my leadership was critical in terms of like stabilizing the district, but I think it's trying to move from stabilization to accelerated learning. And so I said at the time, either I've got to think about this job differently, put some different people in some different seats on the bus, or maybe I should step out of the way, right? Because it felt like they needed, somebody with a strong teaching and learning background or program of work to sort of move from stable to really, really pushing it on academics. So I said, either I can, try to hire for that position, or step aside. And I just chose to step aside. And I think that all too often when you're in these public roles, people stay too long, right? You guys have seen it, superintendents, the upside of being a superintendent in a town like Memphis and Cito, like a town like Baton Rouge and Nashville, places like that, is that you quickly become a local celebrity, right? So like all of those, I have seen people shy away from that to do the work, but I've also seen people become consumed with that. Then it's no longer about student outcomes and moving to work. It becomes about staying in the role, and then people get. And I would tell you, anybody, man, somebody told me, my mentor told me, look, the human body and soul is not meant for long-term exposure to jobs like this, because it's really, really, really hard. You got to make all of your decisions in public. Everybody wants your time. When something goes well, it should have gone well 2 years ago. When it goes bad, it's all your fault. I had 15,000 employees that meant at some point people were doing something wrong at all times every day, and then they find out about it, and then it'd be your fault. So like that pressure, if you really, really are interested in moving the needle on student achievement, is a distraction. And then I'd also say too, it can be difficult to work with elected boards, right? Like I've seen elected boards that are really, really good boards, have been trained really well, understand governance, want to focus on data and move. Even really, really good boards is tough to work with, let alone boards who have multiple people who are not necessarily interested in student achievement, and just the pressure of board members calling you on you to give their friends jobs or contracts or whatever. Like that's not saying that's specifically what I did with, just saying nationwide, that's what people have to deal with. So I think at the end of the day, just that thinking about that pressure and thinking about whether or not I should remake myself, it just felt like, you know what, the district deserves somebody with a fresh perspective and approach. And so I was actually speaking with the president of the U.S. markets, a guy named Mike Triplett, who I have so much respect for, who runs Cigna. And so I just picked his brain around like, hey man, I'm thinking about maybe 18 months leaving, just want to get your idea of like, how I should be thinking about it, what type of industries should I be thinking about? And so he said, well, Dorsey, actually, man, we have been talking for a long time about focusing on K-12 markets. Like they had a government practice, and so K-12 markets. So he said, if you're interested, man, on down the road, let's talk about whether you want to do something like this. So I said, well, look, man, I don't know anything about insurance. He said, but you understand schools. So fast forward a couple of years, when I got ready to really leave, kind of looked around, and we started talking about it more and more. So I decided to make that jump. And I was really excited about sort of corporate healthcare, particularly around, how do you help design products that are going to meet the unique needs in K-12? Like, how do you market? How do you, innovate? So those things were very exciting to me. So I put together, I thought it was a strong business plan. And I think the day after I pressed send, COVID hit. COVID hit. So
Wow, no way.
yeah, and it was really, 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 and you all know this. I mean, particularly you're thinking about something as, intimate as healthcare. There are a lot of relationships are involved, right? Like you got to have a lot of trust with the people that you're talking to, and it's hard to build that rapport and that trust on a Zoom, right? So like, unlike before the pandemic, where you just jump on a plane and go spend time with people and get to know the product, like we just weren't in a position to do that. So we still did what we could, but it was just tough in that environment. But we still had a plan, right? So I am doing my job the best I can. And my former chief of staff, said, hey, man, here's a role. It's a place called City Fund, man. It looks like you'd be great for it. And so long story short, connected with them. And I have been with them for the last 3 years. And I love the role. It allows me to be close enough to, or gives me some influence on how people pursue student outcomes, and be close enough to the work. But I don't have to go to a board meeting. Right.
Yes. Well, you know what? Can we just, I wanna highlight some things that you said. And we've had a couple guests who have talked about the challenges of the politics behind boards.
Yeah.
The reality that boards are more and more comprised of individuals that may have some selfish or individualistic mindsets. I think maybe that's the way that I can frame it to keep it PG there.
Yeah.
And are becoming are just less equipped to do the work, right? And have less knowledge and things of that nature. But I also just want to say, like, shout out to you for like not having like a martyr complex, right? And saying like, but like, I want longevity for this school district. I want this school district is now, I position them for X, right? Or I worked alongside individuals to position them in X. And now I know if I'm looking strategically and what's next, you know, kind of like the next iteration of what needs to come, I know that there probably needs to be someone else in this space to do that work, because everybody wouldn't have done that, because we know that some people are in the positions of power for kids, and there's some people that are in those positions of power for themselves.
That's right.
That's
so,
and I was saying, I was just thinking the same thing you're saying, Tatiana. Like, you know, sometimes you have to think about when you make those moves, whether you do it publicly or not, is to kind of move the district forward. I think you'll find very, very few superintendents always in that mindset. I mean, I would argue that, you know, it's always tough when you go talk to a superintendent, whether they're male or female in those positions, and they're talking about how they want to just survive the job for a paycheck.
Yes.
And not necessarily.
No, I mean, it will do that to you. I mean,
and you know, they got board members or folks who are leveraging their own interests, you know, to do that, right? And so it says a lot about how much you will do to take that job. You know, let me crystallize something, which I think it's important that the audience understands, right? So you were the superintendent or the person chosen at the time to merge two districts, two places which became the largest in the country at the time, to merge a city and a county, right? And people thought that the reason for that merger had more to do around race, and it had more to do around race, but it also was a financial issue, correct?
Yeah, it was primarily driven by. No, you did go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, but race is what people talked about the most. I would argue.
But it was predominantly due to educational funding. Is that correct?
Yeah, without boring you guys with all the details, there was a concern that the suburban school districts would form separate districts anyway, and then well, let me back up. So the Shelby County schools would seek special status and wall off funding from the city of Memphis was a concern.
And so I bring that up to say, and the reality that nobody, so like, you know, one thing we like about being on the podcast is we can talk the truth. We don't have to like, be politically correct.
Let's call a spade,
right? I mean, what people don't know about our country, as much as our country is beautiful and has all these great things in it, is like, there's a lot of segregated things that happen regardless, right? By neighborhoods, by race, by class, by all these things, right? And schools are a dichotomy of how the communities are set up, right?
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, you know, when you hear about Memphis is a great city, been there a bunch of times, people are good people over there. But, you know, when you got different socioeconomic class, when people are not eating, they have all these sets of problems, you're trying to figure out ways that everybody can survive and live,
I mean,
right?
just even giving the context of like, there's this amount of children who live in households that are
less than
10,000 is insane.
So when I could remember, Dorsey, when we heard that you were going down this, people were like, wait a minute, he must be crazy just even trying to take that job. Because there was really, I'm just being honest, right? People were like, yo, I don't know how he's going to survive, right? And then you had all the politics and all that, and you did an outstanding space.
Appreciate it.
But what I think was really more important about that was, I found the most impressive was, after you pivoted through all those things, you were still able to get that place, those kids to learn, right? When you came up with the iZone and all that type of stuff. Because one thing that, you know, I hope people don't glance over, half of those 70-something schools that you cut them in half, that they started performing, right? I mean, you did a lot of different things, because people get caught up on whether it's a traditional school or charter school. It don't matter, right? The bottom line is you created a school that works, kids can learn, right? And I think, like, you know, I think we commend you. I commend you for that. But what I really thought was really interesting was your biggest wins. There's what's the public saw and what was the actual biggest wins.
Mm-hmm.
You left that place in a way better place than they've ever been in a long time, because you could count the superintendents and the people that were going through that district, right? Who has some great ideas, great stuff, but Memphis ate them up and chewed them out. Right? So, right. And so,
a lot of that stuff, I think you're just making me think now. Again, I mean, and I will not take credit alone because you mentioned iZone. Like that was actually formulated by former Superintendent Cash and a guy named Dr. Urban Hamer, God rest his soul. Now we did refine and execute on it, but I think about like, man, when we demerged, man, we had $100 million budget deficit. We had a big structural deficit that we dealt with really from day one when we had to sue the city. And I think when we left, man, we had like a $50 million plus surplus, right? And the finances were right. I think we added about 5,000 additional pre-K seats. We really found a lot of operational efficiencies and tried our best to make that better. So we did a lot of things. I think that and just being real, like sometimes it's just common sense stuff. Like sometimes I don't know why school districts do what they do just because they've just been doing it, right? So I think me having the lens of a lawyer who had been around schools forever, right? I've represented districts in the private sector, and being able to ask the questions that sometimes cabinet members don't want to ask or are afraid to ask, or that sometimes superintendents who are traditional folks who maybe been in the district for a long time don't even think about. So it's like, well, okay, we're doing this, but it's not making sense. Yeah, we've been using this reading program for 30 years, but 20% of the kids can read. So why are we doing that? Or, yeah, these schools, I know they've got sentimental value in the neighborhood. We got to talk about that. But like, it's only 100 kids and we need to close them. Like, so just being really aggressive and thoughtful about, operations, I think is something that history should, leave a good impression on. But then I think also just truly caring about student outcomes. I mean, like when we get testing data back after we do the pep rallies and we did everything that we thought we could do, and then you're thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be the year, and then you get a 2-point jump. I mean, everybody likes to send out the mailer about, oh my gosh, we went up 2 points. I mean, I would literally be disgusted. I mean, not disgusted is probably disappointed, right? Because I mean, like, yeah, you're spending all this money and doing all these things for these incremental gains, but at the end of the day, when you got this suffocating poverty, for many of these kids, their last best chance is to be able to use the education system to change their circumstances in life. And just for example, if I'm from a household with $10,000 a year and I'm able to matriculate through school, hey, I might not go to college. I may go to community college. I may go get workforce development. But if I can get a job making 40 grand, that's life changing when I'm coming from a household with 10,000. So like when I would see those, the difficulty that we had in terms of like really moving to work and get the scores back, I would just be like, man, what are we doing? So like that took a toll on me too. But then you gotta, leadership requires you to step up and keep going. And I think if it had just been about that, because I was so passionate about that and so passionate about the community, we probably could have done that forever. But again, it's just those politics, man. It's just those things.
So I wanna jump into the iZone School Initiative, and I did some research myself and looked into the work, and I was really amazed by what was accomplished through the iZone schools. And then my heart was just like, man, the realities that could exist if there were just genuine allocation of resources in the right places, but also because we know this to be true. I was an educator in the state of Florida, and when you work in turnaround schools, you pour all this money into these schools, and then as soon as that school does well, then you pull all those resources out and you expect them to do the same work that they've been doing with all these additional resources. And that's just not always realistic. Like that is just, it's not. But I was really curious about how y'all made that work and overall, like, talk about what iZone schools were for our audience to learn a little bit about that initiative.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head, and I'll start there. I think that, when you're doing turnaround work, I think the former leader of the iZone used to say that, Dr. Sharon Griffin, she used to say that, the iZone work is like being in an emergency room, right? So if you think about a doctor, you're a general pediatrician or a general primary care physician, that's one practice. But when people are coming in on life support and your every single day is trying to keep them alive, right? Like, let's stabilize and keep alive and keep it going. like that requires a different type of metal if you're a teacher or you're an educator. And so you always are dealing with just the burnout factor. You might go in and crush it for 3 or 4 years, but then it's tough, right? And the what we saw would be like you literally could go into schools where 3% of the kids could read. So just the stabilizing, right, and putting the processes and procedures and structures in place. Like you could do that and move from 3% to 10%, maybe increase the teaching and learning, keep pushing. You maybe get to maybe around 20, 22%. But then once you get to that 20, 25%, then it becomes even more difficult, right, to the next level. Well, the funding would usually run out once you got them off the list, right? So you get them off the list. And I mean, it was exciting to get them off the list, but even when you zoom out, you think about it, all right, so we moved them from the bottom 5 to the bottom 10. That's still not good enough, right? So
Absolutely.
Like, you literally, we just did not have the resources, I think, to sustain even the regular gains in the schools that we're moving, and certainly not to move sort of from just stable to doing well. And this is why, I mean, like, and I'm gonna get on soapbox for a minute. I mean, there's so much work, not just in Memphis, but everywhere. This is why the argument of like, we still have these battles of governance, charter, private, all that. I mean, like, if you can get in here and do the work and help kids, the governance should not matter, right?
That's correct.
Who is best positioned to move the work? Because I think about it now, like, the ASD was created, and the iZone, we really built that really as sort of to compete with the ASD. But at the end of the day, we still have too many kids here who can't read. So any partner who is able, charter school, community partner, or whoever that is able to
help them read.
I mean, exactly. So we should be thinking comprehensively, because we don't have the talent and the human capital to do it by ourselves. We didn't as a district. So I think that all places should be thinking about, how do you work with charter schools? How do you work with other models of schools to make sure that all kids are placed in the best position they can, to get better outcomes?
So one of the things I wanted to bring up, which I thought was interesting, was you didn't say this, but it sounded like you were saying there's never enough funding, right? Because you always hear that argument, right? We have more funds, we got them to do well, but then you're going to have on the other side somebody says, well, we gave a whole lot of money to education and the results ain't the results, right? So what do you think about that?
So if we're keeping it 100, I think it's both of those things could be true, because I know many places that aren't efficient with the funding that they have. I mean, just for example, I won't say specifically, but I know that many urban places have many schools that need to be closed, right? Either because there are no kids there, or
Dorsey, if you say, we ain't gonna tell nobody, so you can
yeah, I mean, it's probably there are probably 20 cities, but I mean, like,
well, I mean, we live in one right now. Our specific city is dealing with some school closure things, and that's just honestly in Duval, because you do have schools that are sitting at 2 elementary schools operationally to run these schools this cost, and then it's a building that holds 800 kids and you got 200 kids in there. That's just the truth.
I'll give you an example just from Memphis and Tatiana. I'm thinking about, like, we have a school called Booker T. Washington. It's one of the oldest historical Black high schools, right? President Obama came here and gave the commencement speech in the mid 2000s, right? So everybody loves BTW. But I saw when I was there, like, it was rebuilt. I think it was built for 13 to 1,500 kids. I think at the time it may have had 400 kids. And so I saw the writing on the wall. So I combined it with the board and made it a 612, right? So we want to keep kids in the school. So fast forward now, I think the last data I saw was there's less than or around 200 kids at BTW now. And that's with it being a 612. So, and it's also built for 1,300 kids. So, like,
well, I was going to say, and the capacity is much greater.
Much greater. And then when you have that few number of kids, you have to overstaff, right? Because the funding formula and all that, you got to have a certain number of teachers. So now you're overpaying to keep a school open that no kids are going to, right? in addition to all the maintenance that happens that comes with it. Like, so when you got those and you take that times, call it 25, right? That's happening 25 times.
Mm-hmm.
If that's happening, then you know you probably are wasting 25 or $30 million, right? So if I'm on the one hand saying, hey, I don't have enough funding, give me some more money. But on the other hand, I can make some decisions to use the funding that I have better, right? So that's the challenge I have. So yes, I think that when you serve in a high needs population, we need to always think about, how do we get those kids more funding because they do need more support. But on the other hand, sweep your front door before you ask for more. I know that can be people don't want to hear that, but at the end of the day, it's hard. If my kid says to me, "Hey, Dad," here's the other day, "Hey, Dad, I need $50 for whatever," and I'm like, "Hey, look, well, but I just gave you $40 and you wasted it on this, right?" So like, do a better job of stewarding what you have, but also ask for more, right? And I think that's right. I think that's you're seeing that more and more, even now, like with the chronic attendance problems that are happening across the country. That's going to have a financial impact. You're seeing more and more of these the vouchers and the ESAs moving forward. At some point, that's going to have an impact. So I think that school districts can be much more efficient in the way that they use their dollars and reallocate those dollars to students that need it, and then also continue to advocate for more dollars.
I want to, and I want to pause just because we've used a little bit of lingo and we've talked a little bit about people that are not in the educational space, making sure that they understand some lingo we've used. So we used turnaround schools that in like the state of Florida, and each state may have different parameters and how you qualify as a turnaround school. But traditionally, the school has been underperforming for a certain amount of time for particular subgroups or things of that nature. And that is what kind of quantifies you as like falling into, or qualifies you, I should say, into this like subgroup.
And that's qualified by the state test.
Exactly, and that is qualified by the state test. And then, so your iZone School Initiative was comprised of schools that fell into that bucket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you also used ASD. Is that correct? And what does that mean for you guys in Memphis?
That was the Achievement School District. And so any school
that by the state of Tennessee.
Yeah. So any school that was in the bottom 5% was eligible to be taken over by the ASD. But
the Achievement School District. Okay, interesting. So that is also technically like a state takeover.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, a state takeover. Yeah. Okay.
So this conversation is fascinating. We can talk about this all day, but we're running out of time. But there's two things I want to talk about to pivot a little bit. As you know, we always talk about not only what's the unlearned, right, part, but also what's the unlimited possibility. So there's two things I want to get us to talk about before, as we shift in this final component. One is, which is probably gonna be a little more personal on this space with you. I mean, you did a yeoman's job. I think, which I always tell folks when they ask me who's some of the best superintendents out there that did some really great work.
You did great work. You did great work too, brother.
Well, you did better than me in that space, I would argue. But I would say, you did such a great job with also the type of challenges that you had around you for kids, and I also shout out to the Counsel Great City Schools, because, they work with some of the larger districts dealing with this stuff, or NAPSI and all these other organizations like ALAS too. But what I wanted to say was, what was this like on your family life? Right? Because, one thing you learn about this job, everybody wants to be in charge or get to these levels, but the amount of time that it takes, the toll on your family life, would love to hear a little bit about that. Because, at first, me and Tatiana were talking about things, and we were like, how was his family life? Yeah. Like, how did he manage to do that, right? And then the other part we want to try to get to before we end also is like, what would be the lessons for future leaders? Like, that would be our unlimited portion that you want to leave for. So, like, let's start with the family life. Like, well, how was that? Like, you were able to pivot, but you went through a lot.
No, man. I mean, it was tough, man. Particularly, my kids were younger back then. So, I mean, it is an all-consuming role. And so, I'd be less than honest if I didn't say that it definitely, took time away from family. I think it also can have an impact on many people's health, right? Like the stress is real. And then just you find yourself in meetings all day long. So just from a definitely, if you don't if you're not intentional about making the time, it definitely will take a big impact, I think, just not on your family and on your personal and mental health. What I would do though is just you just would have, and you learn this over time. You just have to make time for yourself and for your family, right? Like whether that's through scheduling or whether that's through learning how to say no or learn how to better manage your time. But I certainly, Cito, and you know this, man. I mean, it is an all-consuming role, right?
All
I
consuming.
could be hanging out with my son or my daughter in the grocery store, minding my own business. Somebody come grab you by the back of your shoulder and tell me you fired their cousin 3 years ago, right? Like all that stuff is real.
I can't stop it.
Oh, listen,
Yeah, it's,
I bet you anybody that is a
yeah,
superintendent or on a board or anything like that can relate to that conversation.
and that is, I mean, that's some advice that says you talk about just sort of learning.
Yeah.
I would encourage any new or young superintendent to set boundaries, and then also like you cannot do this work overnight. You cannot do it by yourself, right? So you got to say, if you got to have a plan of work to make sure because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. And I always tell people,
That's right. That's right.
you can run hard as you can, and you can ignore everything else, but if you kill over in that superintendent seat, they're gonna have a news story about you. They're gonna be sad. They're gonna have the flags gonna be raised, half staffed the next day. But then 48 hours later, there's gonna be a special call meeting, and you're gonna be replaced. And
people will be clapping.
exactly. And all that love you got when you were sitting in that seat, they're gonna be giving it to the next man. So, you got to do it, lead with passion. I think you got to really, really, really be concerned about outcomes of the community to do it well. But you got to make sure you put parameters around your time so you can protect your family's time and your own time.
Now, I have I'm going to pivot a little bit from that, but just to talk a little bit about your work with City Fund. So you are kind of, I like to call it your education adjacent in your work. You're close enough, but not, going through all the politicking, if we want to call it that. I see that you guys are doing some work across the country from California to DC. And I think some work in like Texas. So you're kind of touching a couple different places. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys specifically do there? And if people wanted to learn a little bit more about City Fund, what could they do, et cetera?
Yeah, I would. So let me just start out by saying, school choice and options is very near and dear to my heart, right? Like when you think about poor Black people, we have the fewest choices and options of everything, whether it's where to shop, where to eat, what store you going to. So school choice fits right in there. Like we traditionally have been stuck in whatever school is around the corner, right? Like notwithstanding, and this, sometimes, if you got schools that, those are the tough to staff schools. Those are the schools that usually don't get the most support. So they just become just a cycle of just not doing well. And I just think it's horrible that, some families have no options. So, I think just protecting choice and option, I think is very important to me. So at City Fund, what we do is we really invest in leaders who either are building ecosystems or are working directly in the charter sector to expand high quality options for families. That's one component. We also do a lot of policy work at the state and the local level to open the door to have more public school choice and options. There's a difference between public and private schools, so like public school choice and options. And so we are in, I think, 21 cities now, and we are looking to scale across the country. There's a lot of data around the efficacy of our work that we're super proud of. I know we run up against time, but that's how I would characterize it. So City Fund, we're a catalytic funding philanthropic organization focused on supporting organizations that help build ecosystems or invest directly in charter schools.
Well, we're running out of time. Let's get you for about a minute or two. And for us, this notion around being unlimited, and unlimited is about the solution and possibilities. With all the great things that you have been fortunate to do in your career and your lifetime, what would you say are some of the most unlimited things that you're tremendously that people should think about, and also what you're hopeful for?
Right. What do you look forward to?
Yeah, in these coming years around education, and also for yourself.
Oh wow! I think in terms of hopefulness, I think that I am scared to death of the digital divide that's going to continue to deepen with AI coming, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've sort of been to the mountaintop and peered over and seen some of the stuff that's on the horizon. Our former CEO works for one of the companies that's right at the forefront of some of this AI technology. So we've been privy to some things. And so I am hopeful that the technology boom will be able to help accelerate learning for kids across the country, particularly poor and Black and brown kids. But I'm also concerned that we won't have the access to technology as quickly as some other folks, and then we'll continue to fall far behind. But I'm also hopeful, man, because I still see, man, despite all the crazy stuff that's happening, and despite all the crazy stuff that has happened, I mean, when I was with a group of educators yesterday, people still have a heart for kids, and people are still have the hope and the desire to keep it going, whatever that looks like. So I know as long as you've got dedicated folks in these classrooms, in these schools, and in these communities that are going to continue to fight for kids, something positive is going to happen. And I'd sort of lead with for people who are ready to jump in this work. It's not for the faint of heart, right? Like
not at all.
You need to be crystal clear in terms of the goals and in terms of some of the outcomes that you're looking for. And you can't be afraid to speak up when you see something is off track. You can't be afraid to change course and admit that you made a mistake. Stay humble in the work and lead by example.
Are you also hopeful you'll make it through these 4 years at Spelman? Question.
I know. Look, if I don't see some A's and B's in the first report period, my daughter needs to be hopeful she makes it through these 4 years.
Listen, I know she's gonna be listening to this too.
We're gonna send her this clip.
Just this part. She just needs to see the ending part right here.
Yeah, no, Dorsey, we appreciate you coming on the show. I mean, really insightful. I know there's so much more me and Tatiana could talk to you about, but we just grateful for the insight, and also just thankful for people like you in education. In spite of all this politics, this craziness, keeping kids first, man, you did an outstanding job. I mean, that city's been better for it. Memphis is a great city. I tell people if they haven't been there, go visit. Sometimes people read all this stuff, but I'm like, Memphis got a lot of good things going on.
I think we just need to go for the barbecue.
We're working on it.
Tatiana, you know who makes the best barbecue in Memphis?
Who?
Me.
So I feel like you're inviting me over. That's what you said. I'm coming over.
Well, listen, man, thank you so much. If for our audience, if you like our show, please make sure you share, like, subscribe. If you have any comments for Dorsey Hopson, please let us know. We'll put his handler up and how you can reach him. Also, the best thing we love is that, when usually after the show, people have other comments they want to ask. We send that to our guests, and they can make sure they communicate with you as well. But we really appreciate all the time that Dorsey, you've taken out your busy schedule to come and talk to us. But then again, make sure, hey guys, you keep Unlearned Unlimited on tune. As you know, we're always super excited about everything that we do, and we think we got another banger of a show. And so we look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, Unlearned Unlimited. Thanks.
Yes.
Unlimited, 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 unlimited.